So, my name is Duc-Hung from the University of Science, Vietnam National University of Ho Chi Minh City. So, I would like to give a big thanks to RISC-V Day Vietnam Organization Committee for inviting me to lead the presentation of implementation of 32-bit and 64-bit RISC-V on hardware. So, first of all, I would like to give a brief introduction of the University of Science. The University of Science is the key member of the Vietnam National University of Ho Chi Minh City. The university was established in 1941 and it has a long history of 80 years. The university has 9 faculties, consist of information technology, biology and biotechnology, chemistry, electronic and telecommunication, mathematics and computer science, material science, physics and engineering physics, environmental science and geology. We are leading key institution of undergraduate and postgraduate education, research and technology transfer in the fields of natural sciences, life sciences, and technology of the Vietnam University of Ho Chi Minh City in southern of Vietnam. So about the Faculty of Electronic and Telecommunications, so we have 2 courses in undergraduate and graduate. For undergraduate course, so we have 3 departments. So the first one is the Department of Electronics, a major in IC design, biomedical electronics, and automation control. The second department is the Department of Computer and Embedded System, a major in computer engineering and embedded system. And the last department is the Department of Network and Telecommunications, a major in telecommunication engineering and telecommunication system. For graduate course, so we have 2 master programs of electronic engineering. The first one is the major of IC design and microelectronics, and the second one is the major of computer, electronics, and telecommunication. We also have the Ph.D. course of radio and electronics. And the DESLAB is the key laboratory of the Faculty of Electronics and Telecommunications. So our current research themes consists of low power analog and digital IC design, embedded design, and chip verification. We also focus on digital signal processing, biomedical signal processing, and a smart integration system. So in the last year, I made a little bit contribution to our community by translating the book of Professor Martin's Digital Design Title into Vietnamese, and the book has been published in the first quarter in the last year. And it's free for open access, so you can download the Vietnamese version at the page of Professor Martin. I also look forward to receiving the feedback from reader so that I can improve in the next translation process. And the next part, I will present about our implementation on RISC-V with 32 and 64-bit. So we already know about RISC-V, so I will not mention it again. So there are some open source RISC-V 32-bit and 64-bit, for example, Rocket Chip, Fast RISC-V, people RB32, Swanty, or Boom. And there are some commercial products with RISC-V, for example, some RISC-V chip from Giga device, or especially with the ESP32 with the new version, or C5. There's a lot of RISC-V products with 32 and 64-bit, and from C Studio, and some products of C Studio with RISC-V, so they are integrated with some AI accelerator and some cryptographic cores. About SoC design, so we know that SoC need more than just a CPU core. So we don't need only the CPU core, but we need the additional IP cores. For example, memory IP core, peripheral IP core, or some serial interface such as SPI, I2C, and so on. And we need some burst connection, burst bridge, burst converter. So it will take us very long time to develop a system on chip. And in our implementation, we use CPI. So we know that CPI is a framework for designing and evaluating full system hardware using agile teams. And it is composed of a collection of tools and libraries designed to provide interaction between open source and commercial tools for development of system on chip. And CPI is a generated solution from UC Berkeley, so it can we can save a lot of time to develop system on chip, and it supports many RISC-V cores such as rocket chip or boom cores, and it uses CHISO and MIST config to generate the value code. And here is symbol of the internal architecture of rocket chip. Is the rocket core which is generated from CPI. And we can make a configuration using existing module, or we can add or replace a boom core by a rocket core, or we can add an additional interface, for example, CTAC, by modifying the configuration. And at the first step, so we use the CPI design flow. So we define specification, so number of cores, which version we use, 32 or 64-bit, which peripheral cores and accelerator we need, and we make configuration to generate Scala CHISO code. And after that, we convert CHISO into FreeRTL and then to the value code. For implementation on the hardware, so we use the value code from the RTL generator in the above step, and we feed them into the FPGA design flow, and we can configure them on the FPGA of Xilinx or Intel. On FPGA, we can make faster prototype implementation, and we can check its functionality, and we can develop the demo result on the FPGA. But we look forward to implement the system on chip. We use the variable code from FPGA from the FPGA design flow. After we check, we verify that it can work on the FPGA, and we feed them into the ASIC design flow. And in this step, we need to remove the redundant code, which are generated from CHISO, and then we convert from the CHISO code to the value code. Because when we generate the code from the CHISO, so and then we convert from CHISO to the value, so it will generate a lot of redundant code, and I said that that's the stupid code. So and it when we run the synthesis, so it can generate a lot of logic resource, and when we run the play around, so it can increase the foresight of the system. And this is the result of the implementation of the 32-bit RISC-V on the FPGA. So we use the Litex framework with the RISC-V core, and we run the Linux on RISC-V SoC on Xilinx Nexus 4 DDR. And in this chip, so we only use one RISC-V 2-bit DRAM SD card, and we also integrate with some traditional cryptography cores such as AES-128 or RSA-2048 or SHA-1, and we load the Linux image through UART connection. And here is the result of the system on the FPGA on the Nexus 4 DDR of Xilinx. And this is the architecture of the system when we integrate with some basic and traditional cryptographic cores. They are served as accelerator in on this Litex on the FPGA. And right hand side is the logic resource on FPGA when we implement the RISC-V core only, and we integrate the cryptographic core with the RISC-V. So we can see that the logic resource of some cryptographic core may be larger than bigger than the RISC-V core only. And this is the result of some traditional cryptographic cores on this Litex on FPGA. So the first one here is the SA1 accelerator on the system, and the below image here is the result of the RSA 2048. So we can see here is the input text before encryption, and the output text after decryption here. But we look forward to implement the system on ASIC, and this is the result of the system on ASIC, and we just set a basic constraint with the frequency around 50 megahertz, and the pore size is about 3.9 by 3.9 millimeters on the 65 nanometers CMOS process. The next one is the result of implementation of the 64-bit RISC-V, and in this system we just config a dual core RISC-V 64-bit. We don't integrate cryptographic core with this system, and with 64-bit RISC-V core, so we develop a digital design flow with this 64-bit RISC-V implementation. And first of all, we clone from FPGA and build environment some necessary tool libraries, and we make configuration and generate the Verilog code. And after that, we set up timing constraints, some relevant library, and script for automation backend execution. After that, we run synthesis to generate get level netlist and logic equivalent checking at the post synthesis step, and then generate floor plan, macro, and blockage list. And after that, we run the plain route with the get level netlist that we got it from the synthesis above step. And we run the logic equivalent checking at the post routing step, and run parasitic ASIC extraction. And after that, we run sign-off verification via LVS, antenna, boundary, ARC, EMI, and so on. And after the final sign-off verification has been completed and clean, so it can be ready for test out. However, for this two implementation on 32-bit and 64-bit RISC-V, so we just stop at the play and route step. It's not ready for test out, even though that we stream out the GDS file, but we still now we don't have a chance to make test out for this implementation. And it's the result of the system on the FPGA on the CD board of silent. And after that, we make the implementation of the 64-bit RISC-V on ASIC. The frequency is about 500 megahertz, and the core size, the dimension is around 1.17 by 1.17 millimeters. And it was implemented on 7 nanometer Finfet process. So In our university, we don't have this process, but with the allowance of the manager of my master student, he's working in this this implementation in his company with the allowance of his manager for research and education purpose only. So here is some result of the ESC and antenna verification. And next one is the DAC and LVS verification of the 64-bit with the dual core 64-bit RISC-V. And the next part of my presentation is I want to introduce about some PCB design for RISC-V chip. So with the acceptance of Professor Pham from UC, so I want to share some the PCB design for 32-bit RISC-V chip test and the PCB design for 64-bit RISC-V chip test. And all these four are dedicated to Professor Pham from the University of Electro-Communications from Japan. And this is the peripheral port for the RISC-V chip test. So it's not only used for RISC-V, but it can but also used for any microprocessor, any CPU, any microcontroller, because it has a lot of interface for testing. For example, UART, GTAX, SPI with the flash and SD card integrated with this core and the I/O interface. So it can work standalone, or it can be developed with FPGA board. And this our ongoing plans with RISC-V. So we are going to develop data acquisition chip for secure IoT application, and it's based on a RISC-V. And in this chip, it consists of CPU 32-bit RISC-V that we implemented and I presented in the previous slide. So the reason why we want to implement the RISC-V on ASIC, because we want to check and to make it already to integrate in the system like this. And we also developed some other cores, for example, flash ADC or the analog front-end or traditional and lightweight cryptography cores. And some cryptography cores has already finished, and we are developing some other lightweight cryptography cores so that we can we want to integrate all of these cores into a data acquisition chip for secure IoT application. And the next another design that we are going to develop is an AI accelerator with RISC-V. So we will combine a DNN Weaver with a dual core RISC-V 64-bit, and they are open source too. The DNN Weaver is a DNN accelerator. They are already open source, and the RISC-V is already for the open source. So after we finish this system, so we are willing to share and open all of the codes and design to everyone, because so we here use the RISC-V, they are open. So there's no reason that we only keep our design for ourselves only. And when we share, we open the design, that is the chance to collaborate with the person who may concern, and it's the way to develop IC design in Vietnam. So this is the end of my talk. So the objective of my presentation is going to share some RISC-V implementation on FPGA on ASIC, and we realize that we just a newbie in the RISC-V implementation, so there's no state-of-the-art techniques in my talk, and we hope that to give a specific system on RISC-V in the next year, we have chance to give a talk in the next year. And we look forward to collaborate with person or organization in IC design and SoC design in our project in the future. So that's the end of my talk. So thank you for your listening.
Well, thank you, Mr. Duc-Hung Lea. So you are the specialist on that digital signal processing, and then what would be the most important application of your DSP technologies that you plan to develop with the RISC-V?
Now we are not any project on the DSP with the RISC-V yet, but we are going to develop an analog front end to integrate with the RISC-V. So in this in the analog front end here, so you can see here, so that it can be integrated with the CPU RISC-V or with the DSP here. So we can modify the RISC-V the RISC-V structure to make it compatible with the DSP. However, I think that the CPU architecture and the DSP architecture is had the same architecture, but in the DSP the speed of the multiplier and accumulator is faster than the adder and the multiplication in the CPU. So I think that temporarily now we separate the CPU architecture with the DSP architecture. If we modify the CPU on RISC-V to be the DSP, I think that it can decrease the performance of the DSP.
So you're very interested in DNN and also in DSP technologies, and yeah, go ahead.
Yes, that is the new research term in our laboratory, because in the recent years, from the last 1 to 2 years, we developed the AI system is based on the GPU from NVIDIA. But now I would like to develop the smart integration system or the AI system on the edge device. The edge device is mean that we can process and so that they can learn the object from the input, so that we need to develop the DNN viewer, and it can be served at the DNN accelerator and integrated inside the AI device. So that is the plan that we are that we look forward to implementing, but we don't have the full result now. So I hope that in the next year, so we have the if we have the good result, so we can share with you in the next year.
So I have one more question. You worked on this chisel book. Chisel. The first question that I have about this chisel book is, how long did it take to just actually do? Did you do the translation by yourself, or how many people worked on it, and then how long did it take to just translate it into that Vietnamese language?
Yes. I translated the book by myself only. Only me did translate this book, and as I remember that I started to translate the book in the December of the 2020, and we finished after 3.5 months, maybe in the middle of the February, and during my translation, I asked Professor Martin for his permission, and after his agreed, so I go on to translate and complete the translation of the book. And when I finished translating the book, so I sent the file to Professor Martin, and maybe after 1 week, he published the translated file on his website.
I see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Later, can you just provide me with that final link to that your PDF file? And apparently, this is like that you can distribute it. You can download it from the PDF file in Vietnamese, right? That the Vietnamese chisel book.
Yes. So so the Vietnamese book is already on the website of the Professor Martin. So you can access from the website of Professor Martin, and in his page, so there are many versions. That is of the original version in English, in Chinese, in Japanese, and Vietnamese, as I remember. So I will share, and I will send you the link of the book with the Vietnamese versions. Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah. And what do you think about that the chisel language as opposed to like the system Verilog and then all these other things?
I think that the Chisel is a high level programming language. It is released for the engineering of electronic and the engineering of computer science. So it is a high level. I think it's quite convenient. So it seems like the system Verilog or high-level synthesis. So now we can use the C or C++ on any FPGA device. For example, we can use the high-level synthesis on Xilinx or on Intel FPGA device. So we can use the high-level synthesis to write the code in C or C++ to describe the circuit. Instead of we use the Verilog code, because now the system is more and more complicated. So we cannot use the hardware description language such as the Verilog or VHDL to describe the language. So we need the higher level programming language to do that. And that's why there's a lot of high level programming language was released. For example, Chisel is one case. High-level synthesis is one case. System Verilog is one case. So I think that so we can use the Chisel so that we can save a lot of time to develop a system. That is the advantage of the Chisel if we compare with develop. But when we use the Chainsaw, because it's a high-level programming language, so it cannot describe in more detail and exactly the behavior of the circuit at the lower level. So that's why when we convert from the Chainsaw to the Velox code, so it will generate it's a lot of redundant code. Why? Because it cannot understand and we cannot realize the circuit at the lower level. So I think the Chainsaw is good, but somehow we will use the Chainsaw and the Velox or the behavior code in the parallel, because each of the language they will have their own advantages. So I think that that is the good way to develop the more complex system in nowadays.
So do you and then your students actually do a lot of work on Chisel, or not just yet?
We work on the Chainsaw quite much, not less, not much, because we have another project and another system, and so that's why we just started to implement on the RISC-V just less than a year. Even though we collaborated with Professor Phạm at the UEC more than 2 or 3 years ago. But we just started in the last year because we need more and more human resource to research on this area, because we have another project, we have another work, we have another system. So that's why we don't pay much time for Chainsaw. Not much and not less time for Chainsaw. It's so. But I hope that we can pay more time, pay more much time on Chainsaw in this year.
Okay, so there was a question that came. Let's see. Here's a question from Manuel Tien, and so question is, how is the general speed of the 64-bit CPU you've implemented? That's one question.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then can it reach up to like 1 gigahertz? And then what are the constraints for that governs this sort of limit?
Yes. May I answer the question?
Yes.
So the current, yeah. So can I answer the question?
Sure, no problem. Yeah, I'm sorry. I wasn't giving you good enough cue.
Yes, thank you. The current result of the let I show you. I jump to the slide with the 64-bit RISC-V. So the frequency now we were implemented on this process is around 50 megahertz only, and so if we set up the constraint and we modify the switch, so I think that we can achieve the 1 gigahertz. I believe that I can achieve the frequency up to 1 gigahertz, because in the previous design, so we implemented the open spark CPU with the 2 cores, and it can the frequency is was going up to 1.2 gigahertz. So I think that after we make some optimization, so we can achieve the frequency at 1 gigahertz. And I believe that, but I'm not sure about that. Yes.
So I have one more question. So you mentioned that the 7-nanometer FinFET process, right? And
Yes.
so you are exposed to like a 7-nanometer, like a FinFET design kit, right?
Yes, we don't have this Finfet kit because it's only available in the in a foundry or in some design service company. We don't have this process in our university.
I see. So you worked on the 7-nanometer. How you said that you I believe you did so you do have that like access to that the design like a library or something? Is that how you actually measure that gigahertz? I mean, like for clock frequencies?
So you mean that the library or the device or it or the device or the instrument? So you mean that?
Yes. So anyway,
Sorry.
well, I guess that your abstract says that like 2-core 64-bit RISC-V on FinFET process. That's something that you worked on, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
And I just wanted you to elaborate on this, how like you did this, etc. So, if you could.
Yes, because
Yeah.
yes, I'm sorry that some words maybe I cannot hear well because why not see here? On this fintech process, because we don't have the process here, so the process is implemented was implemented in the company, so that we had to ask for the permission of the manager at this company because my master student is working at this company, so he can use this for the research and for the education purpose only. So that's why we try to implement this system on this 7-nanometer FinFET process. Yes.
Okay.
So
that was very clear. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for doing this presentation, and then congratulations on your like a book. And I would like to move to the next presenter.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.